Can I get a motion? Sorry, motion to approve the agenda. Regina, Watson, discussion of the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. Minutes. Make a motion to approve the minutes. Yeah. I don't get the minutes. I mean, technically, I'll hear it. Opposed. Okay. Move right to new business. Discussion of legislative and congressionally directed funding.
Hello. So we, in the state budgeting process, we were able to get funding to finish funding for the election center, which is very exciting. And it's very timely also, as we just started the contract with the implemented design and construction management for the election center. So this is a reminder of how this funding stacks up. We got $1 million in the fall supplemental. We've spent about half of that money, or at least intended, we committed about half of that money. Some of that will be for Dykema. We put a new roof on the building, parking lot had to be redone, so we contributed to that. We also made security improvements to the building, and have made investments. We need some furniture, things like that, alarms, keypads, security system, shatterproofing the glass, things like that. So we have about $500,000 left over from the first tranche of funding. We have this new $1 million coming from the state, which will allow us to continue to make security improvements to the facility heading into November. Hopefully we won't need them, but the facility will make whatever investments we need to. And we'll also be drawing funds from the Cable Communications Fund to rebuild CPM studios and move them out to that facility. So we're going to have enough money to do a high quality renovation and remodel of that facility. I am very confident that by the end of that project, it will be election year right here in Arbor. So very happy about that. We had other asks in the legislature for Bicentennial Park, for an emergency operations center, and for fire station replacement that were not funded. There's significantly less money floating around Lansing this time, and so the signals we were getting from leadership early on were that we had maximum of one coming. So prioritized. That's where we wound up. There will be a fall supplemental. Andrea and I were just discussing that earlier. It looks like the fall supplemental is going to be more focused on education, both higher education and K-12 education. Leadership always starts out by saying we're not fielding requests for legislatively directed community projects. We'll see if that commitment remains when we get closer to the funding date. So we're going to keep an eye on the fall supplemental. There will likely also be a lame duck supplemental. So we're kind of keeping an eye on both of those opportunities. On the federal side, we submitted our battery of projects. Again, as a reminder, we're really blessed in Ann Arbor with Congresswoman Dingell, who, is in leadership, is well networked. There's just a constant fighter for the city at every corner. Could not be more pleased with the support we get from Congresswoman Dingell. So she has supported our earmark request for the train station. So that is working its way through the committee process. On the Senate side, Senator Peters, this is his second go around on the Senate Budget Committee, or Appropriations Committee, which is a good spot for us to be in. He's supporting multiple requests from the city, but given Dingell's support on the House side, we think we will be asking to prioritize the train station request as a top priority, and then see what we can get from the other requests. We submitted a request for the Barton embankment, which is to shore up the earthen dam that holds our water reservoir on one side. So we're hopeful for some funds from there. And we also supported a request for the Tree Line Trail, which is getting, work is progressing very well on the tree line, and they are getting to the point where the acquisition and construction projects are going to be shovel ready and teed up and ready to swing at. And so we're supporting a request for the tree line trail as well. So we're hopeful on the federal side, but that, that process is really just getting underway in the House and is not underway. So you've got some time. Any questions?
All right.
I might recommend that we skip to agenda item 3 because that will inform agenda item 2. Okay, with no objection. So I think that we have done well with our legislative agenda in that we have not left any opportunities uncalled. We have, in several notable instances, legislation that we prioritized was adopted, and we were, I think, very hopeful in getting that legislation through committee and prioritized. In some instances, legislation we wanted, we saw to its natural and untimely conclusion. And there's really no place else for us to go with it in this legislative session. I will say generally that the sustainability and environmental sections of our agenda are the ones where there is probably still opportunity for us to make some progress because Democratic leadership, there's a lot of wrangling within the caucus about what that legislation and various topics should look like. And there's been a lot of discussion about kind of pitching these bills to the lame duck session. And so is there an opportunity to pass some of these bills in lame duck? So I'll just going through the list. We had endorsed community choice aggregation. That is the only specific piece of policy that we weren't able to get introduced. There's really not much interest in it in the legislature. We had endorsed raising the retail choice cap. That was introduced. There are not the votes to pass that out of the Democratic caucus, which is unfortunate, but it is where we are. We had endorsed mandating energy efficiency in the construction code. That is not a legislative initiative, that's a regulatory initiative, and all indications are that we're moving toward adoption of the updated building codes sometime late summer, early fall. So we're optimistic on the front. We included legalizing community solar. There are community solar bills that have been introduced. I went up and testified on behalf of them. There is, those are bills where I think there is some thinking that they will have an opportunity in lame duck. If we can get them out of the Senate and they're teed up and ready to go, the Senate still has session days since none of them are up for re-election. So there's an opportunity to get that bill, I think, and that's a push that I think might be important for us to think about as a lame duck strategy. We had a list of changes we wanted to state law to support on-site solar power. Many of them were left off of the energy bills that were passed. We were able to get an increase in the distributed generation cap. That was not passed legislatively, though. We were able to achieve that through a regulatory filing with the Public Services Commission. We challenged a filing by DTE, and as part of the settlement with DTE, they agreed to increase the distributed generation cap in our area. So it's not a statewide increase, but we were able to have a decent increase, up to 6%, I think, for the distributed generation. And we also, there's a bill working its way through the legislature that would ban HOAs and site condos from banning solar. We went up, I testified in favor of those bills, and those, I know that they went, it was passed through the House. I think we're waiting for that's potentially a lame duck strategy for us as well. But I've heard, all I'm hearing from those bills is there's support there, and they just need to find the time and the right time to pass. I think that's good. And the Michigan Healthy Climate Plan, we endorsed codifying that, and the legislature did codify it. On environmental protection, polluter pays is still a high priority for us. The governor has said she supports it. There's work being done in the legislature, but at this time there isn't agreement on what that legislation looks like. That has the potential to be a lame duck strategy, but their bills need to get on the table and need to get moving, and the clock is kind of ticking on their pace at this point. So, you know, again, Senator Irwin is right in the thick of that. Representative Morgan is right in the thick of that. So we're feed into those negotiations. We've provided feedback, but it's a lot of political machinations up in Lansing that we're not going to be able to have much influence on that need to break open for that bill package to be introduced. We had some general discussion about further empowering and strengthening EGLE vis-a-vis, you know, how it can support the Drinking Water Act and Clean Water Act. Also, the regulatory limitations that are on EGLE. There was a bill passed during the Snyder administration that said EGLE couldn't issue any rules that were more strict than the federal rules. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, or anybody in the room, but I think that prohibition was repealed or is in the process of being repealed.
Correct.
Thank you. So that's a big win for EGLE. But, you know, there's also a new director of EGLE. We've met with him, had a lot of very good discussions with him about how the agency works and the philosophy of the agency that I think have been very productive. So where there hasn't been great opportunities legislatively to reshape the agency, we've taken advantage of relationships to try to referee the new director and give our feedback directly to him. And I think those have been good discussions. And then we have the repealing the ban on local plastic bag bans. The feedback from Representative Brayback, who introduced that, we went up and testified on behalf of that bill as well. The feedback from Representative Brayback is that it is caught up in committee for largely political reasons. So we're, you know, she didn't seem particularly optimistic the last time I spoke to her, but it has been introduced. It's received a hearing. She's working on it. We're on the record supporting it. I feel good about the work we've done so far. On transportation, the local speed limits bill passed. Yay. After 3 or 4 legislative sessions, we finally got it over the hump, so that was very exciting. And our second issue there is encouraging pedestrian safety along state trunk lines. That is constantly like beating your head against a brick wall. But, you know, with the council considering action on the wireless state trunk lines, that's potentially an opportunity to not have to worry about that anymore if we acquire state trunk lines. So that's something to keep in mind. On housing affordability, we endorsed banning source of income discrimination. That passed. Very excited about that. And we also were able to work with the Michigan Association of Planners to have legislation introduced through Representative Grant's office that would mandate affordable housing planning for the municipality, that would incentivize requiring duplexes or at least expanding, you know, duplexes by right within zoning. I am not terribly optimistic that those have a path forward in the legislature, but there's, you know, through the introduction of those bills, there's been a lot of education going on. And I think we've cultivated a lot of ground for future legislative action. So I'm actually really happy with where we are. We endorsed split rate property taxes, which of course failed miserably. But everything I'm hearing is that Duggan still wants it. Democratic leadership is still committed to it. This might be something that comes back in lame duck. So I don't think all hope is lost there. Repealing the ban on rent control was introduced, but it just does not have a pathway forward in the legislature. There isn't the support for that.
Since we are reviewing our legislative agenda, I'd like to put it in that one.
Sure.
Because I think it warrants further discussion.
Sure. Yep. No problem. We supported the bill package that the clerks wanted to make all of our early voting and you know, no reason absentee voting and all the wonderful reforms we've had in the state a little more administrable. Thanks to a lot of effort, Jackie Boudery, as president of the clerks, was instrumental in getting that bill package passed. I'm excited that it passed, so we can check that as a victory. And Elliott Larson, changing Elliott Larson passed, repealing right to work. passed. And the repeal of the Death Star laws is still in limbo. So,
Yeah, I'd be curious for an update on that.
yeah, Andrea, do you have thoughts on the Death Star bill package?
Yeah, I honestly haven't heard a lot, anything specific on that, just more generally, you know, had heard the House probably wasn't taking up, you know, if anything, that's kind of one of a long list of potentials for lame duck. It's not something that's being discussed in the fall, the few weeks of House fall session. So there's a potential for lame duck, but really no specific conversations on that right now, pre-election.
Yep.
Well, this is more of a question for us to think about internally. Something like CCA, which is part of our agenda, doesn't seem to be getting any traction up in Lansing, but is pretty impactful to one of our local plans. I think it assumes that CCA would be adopted by 2025 in 820. Are we looking at how that shifts our local planning, and or if there's something else we need to try to shift and support up to Lansing if CCA isn't the path, is something that we should be trying alternatively?
You know, we are trying things alternatively. You know, if you're not pursuing CCA, then you're operating within largely the existing regulatory framework and pushing DTE and the Public Services Commission to change their rate plans and take alternative energy more seriously. You know, one thing that so as a default setting, Missy Stoltz and her shop challenge almost every rate filing from DTE. A, because they need to be challenged, they need to be pushed. But B, we have found that DTE's eagerness to settle on favorable terms has increased quite a bit. And part of that is that the members of the Public Services Commission that Governor Whitmer has appointed are very strong proponents of alternative energy. And so that has changed the orientation of the Public Services Commission quite a bit, and DTE is aware of that, and they have had to change their approach. So we have actually been very successful with challenging rate cases in front of the Public Services Commission. That, I think, as a strategy, you know, that's something that Missy has built up over the last 4 or 5 years. And I think that's really important for us. In terms of how that interacts, you know, the inability to get community choice aggregation on the legislature, how that might interact with our 820 plan, that's a Missy question. That's really our question. You know, it will impact the plan. I can't tell you exactly how.
And then I guess as a follow-up to that, are we thinking about after, obviously, are we going to go through our normal process again of kind of reevaluating who's in all of this as we come up to it?
Absolutely. We'll solicit, probably after Labor Day, we'll solicit feedback from boards and commissions and from council. We have a running file of ideas that have cropped up over the last 2 years. It'll be difficult for us to solidify a plan until we know what happens in November. You know, if Democrats hold the House, well, that's great. That's a very different plan than if Republicans take over the House. If Republicans win the majority back, you're looking for a kind of small ball, one base at a time strategy for some important stuff. Yeah, like we used to have, exactly. You're working in committee to get some language changes here and there, rather than taking big swings. So we just have to wait and see what happens in November. But because of the changes to how this committee works, that this committee adopted, that the council approved, we're on a 2-year cycle for the legislative policy agenda, and we'll, you know, we owe a revised document back to the council to this committee sometime in December, January. And we're going to do the same thing we did before. We'll set up legislative breakfast. We'll reintroduce topics, do the whole thing. Great. So,
is there one if you touched on it, but is there legislation kicking around stormwater and the stormwater utility, or is that?
Yes.
Yeah, so is that, okay.
Yes, Senator Bayer, I think, has legislation that would, I think, strengthen the regulatory environment for municipal stormwater utilities. We're very supportive of it. Actually, the attorney's office has had a lot of interface with the group that is working on that. And we're thankful for that, the work that the attorney's office has done. So we're very supportive of it. Andrea, do you have a read on what is going on with Senator Bayer's stormwater bills and where they are in terms of likelihood of passage?
Yeah, that's Senate Bill 660. There was a hearing before the summer recess. I think that's one of those that is kind of a high priority to revisit in the fall and move forward. That bill really provides that kind of legal framework for municipalities to move forward with the stormwater utility, which is already legal. It, just provides that framework to avoid constitutional challenges and legal challenges to those programs, just to avoid, lawsuits and that. So, yes, that is one. I know Senator Bayer and I spoke about that a couple weeks ago, and she was hoping to move that this fall.
That's really good news.
Yeah, it's great news. Anything else before we talk about lame duck strategy? Great. Well, Andrea, you and I spoke earlier today. Do you want to maybe talk about some of the opportunities we have in lame duck?
Sure. Opportunities, but I'll just warn, this first 6 months of the legislative session this year has been extremely active. A lot of bills moving, a lot of priorities for the administration and that, but still a lot the legislature is hoping to move forward, and a lot that aligns with the city's priorities. As John mentioned, the Senate plans to have a very active fall. They're going to be in committee, having floor votes in session, moving bills and really priming those for lame duck to get as far as they can for lame duck. Because the House is really not expected to vote on much of anything before the election outside of a fall supplemental that's expected, or at least planned right now. So, I think things are positioning, the outcome of the elections are going to change a lot of things. And some of these issues, in polluter pays one, that was a priority. If the House Dems maintain control, that may be one that there's, more work put in, and that carries over into next session. If the legislature flips, there may be an interest in trying to do some, at least initial, pass some level of, some at least first steps, I guess, on polluter pay. Right now, we have a very comprehensive package. I think it's a 10-bill package that's being developed in the legislature, and I doubt you're going to see 10 bills enacted, but, could be. So, but, there might be, the outcome of the election certainly is going to motivate the, impact the agenda. I think you'll see a lot of members that have been working on policies. And again, a lot of these are ones that align with the city's priorities, that they're going to say, we've been waiting patiently. There've been a lot of other priorities that have moved and pushed for those, and try and get some things done. And so, it's going to be, I think there's a lot of opportunity. It's going to be making sure issues are positioned as strongly as possible, because the list of policies kind of being pushed to lame duck is ever growing, and obviously it's 4 weeks of session max, limited capacity, even when they're going 150%, you know, all the committees meeting, you know, weekly with hefty agendas and a lot of activity. It is extremely, you know, at some point things start falling off, and that there's, you know, a limited number of things that actually advance. And so I think we just need to get us, hopefully we'll have a clear sense. I think there's work we can be doing in the fall to kind of position some of these bills as best as possible for the lame duck opportunities. And some of those are bills that are in the Senate to make sure they're really in a strong place when they're sent over to the House, so that they're ready to take those up and really can move forward. So I think coordinating as much as possible to have things moved along as far as they can and is in the strongest position possible, you know, issues worked out, you know, very little kind of refining needed on any policies will really help ensure those are able to kind of be taken up, passed, and enacted in that lame duck session. So we'll be sitting down with House and Senate leadership with staff to kind of get a sense of at least what they currently have on their list of priorities for lame duck. And, you know, of course, talking to members in that too, but it helps to really understand where leadership is starting from. And again, making sure these priorities and where we see opportunity, those bills, kind of trying to keep those on the agenda in best position for that activity. So, you know, a lot of unknowns, and, you know, without the House really kind of being in session much this fall, it's going to come down to those final 4 weeks and what we can really get done. But happy to provide, you know, sorry, don't mean to be a little vague, but there's a lot of unknowns between now and then. So we'll just do all we can to best position the bills, you know, and John ran through several of those. So, you know, working with both the sponsors, committee chairs, you know, leadership on that. I don't know if there's more you needed. Sorry.
No, I think that's a good overview. It is, I mean, it's a fluid political situation. You know, if the lame ducks will look very different depending on the outcome of the election. Yeah. And so, what, you know, I think what we were discussing earlier and mentioned about community solar, that bill is an opportunity. You know, I think we need to focus on it. There's going to be a budget supplemental. I think Andrea and I were discussing this earlier. It's probably unlikely we'll be able to insert a project in there, but I intend to ask and kick the tires on it. So I think that the narrower we keep a lame duck strategy, though, the more likely it is we're going to succeed. We need to pick the bill that is most likely to have the runway to move, and where we as the city of Ann Arbor can be the most effective, and really focus our fire on that. So, would you think that's right, Andrea?
Absolutely. And on the supplemental, I just want to add, you know, there's the fall supplemental, a little more targeted. That opportunity may be more limited. There's certainly expected to be the supplemental in lame duck, and that may be the stronger opportunity, and maybe even stronger. So I don't know, maybe equally strong, whether the House flips or not, but I think there's some real opportunity in the lame duck supplemental.
You know, I think something else I'll add is reflecting on this legislative session with the Democratic control. You know, the lobbying for community project funding has been a singularly frustrating experience. I mean, we've gotten some projects, but the leadership is more likely to look at Ann Arbor and say, you're a well-off community, we're investing our money elsewhere. On the policy side, though, as I think a noted progressive community, I think we have a little more influence on the policy side. People are interested to know where Ann Arbor stands on progressive policies. And so, in the, conversations I've had with state reps and with lawmakers, they want to know where we're at and what we're going to be pushing for. And I think that we have been effective on a number of pieces of legislation, shaping the debate. Nobody's saying, well, where is Ann Arbor before I vote on this? But I do think we've been effective helping to influence debate behind the scenes and influence legislation behind the scenes. So I'm hopeful that we can, use our time to push for, time in the lame duck to push for one or two more victories that are good for this, good for the city and good for the state. Anything else?
It looks like you have some sort of a list there. Are you going to share that with us?
I can, certainly, yeah.
That'd be great.
These are just my own notes on what we've done with the agenda, but I can send that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might pretty it up a little.
Sure.
So that's just my shorthand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Certainly.
Any questions?
No.
All right. Any upcoming business? Beyond everything we've been
Other than lame duck.
Yeah. And reviewing the agenda when it comes to.
That's right.
Yeah. So, okay. Good. We now come to public comment. Looks like we have one person on the line. So if you're interested in making a public comment, please get star nine
To raise your hand.
to raise your hand, please. Okay. Seeing no interest, public comment is closed. We have a motion to adjourn. Watson, Medina, all in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned.
Thanks, Dykema.
Thank you. Thank you.